Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has called on India to cooperate with the ongoing investigation into the murder of a Khalistani terrorist on Canadian soil. Trudeau also added that he does not wish to sever or sour ties with New Delhi. On the other hand, the Indian government claims that Canada has become a safe haven for those wanted in India. The row has left India-Canada diplomatic ties split wide open. The U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan clarified Washington's position and said there is no wedge between the U.S. and Canada over the issue. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and his wife are now in Canada following their visit to the US. Zelensky is set to meet Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and address the Canadian Parliament in Ottawa. While in Canada, Zelensky will also visit Toronto to meet with the Canadian business leaders to strengthen private sector investment in Ukraine's future. In June, Trudeau made an unannounced visit to Kyiv, where he paid his respects at a memorial to the Ukrainian soldiers killed in fighting Russian forces. The US President Joe Biden has assured strong American support for Ukraine against the Russian invasion. Biden hosted Zelensky at the White House. The leaders held a War Council meeting in the White House East Room. During the meeting, both the leaders agreed on specific steps to expand the export of grain from Ukraine in the face of a Russian blockade and tensions with the neighbor Poland. Biden also said Washington would send Kyiv a second Raytheon-built Hawk air defense battery and related equipments. Zelensky also held discussions with the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and other senior Pentagon leaders. Moreover, the U.S. also announced an additional $325 million in military aid to Kyiv. The new package includes air defense capabilities, cluster munitions, anti-tank weapons, and other equipment. Both Russia and Ukraine claim to have taken new military action against each other, while the West is sending more weapons to Ukraine. Russia's ministry claims that it carried out cluster strikes on Ukrainian military facilities and training centers. On the other hand, Ukraine's General Staff of the Armed Forces said that its forces continued their offensive operations in the direction of the Melitopol and Bakhmut regions. In the previous 20 hours, there had been 20 battles between both forces in the frontline areas. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister has confirmed the departure of the second cargo vessel with grain from the Kronomorsk port to Egypt. This is the second bulk carrier that has entered the port using the temporary corridor for civil shipping with 3,000 tons of wheat for Asia. After invading Ukraine last year, Moscow closed off the Black Sea ports from one of the world's biggest suppliers of grain from July. Last year, the ports were reopened under the UN-backed grain deal. However, Moscow quit last year, saying it demands better terms for its own food and fertilizer exports, which were being ignored. France's foreign minister has addressed the United Nations General Assembly and said Russia's war in Ukraine is a blow against the most vulnerable countries. The French government reaffirmed her country's support for the International Criminal Court. Colonia also condemned recent coups in Africa and said African problems require African solutions. The Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who is on an official visit to China, has met with Xi Jinping today. And as per the Chinese state media, this is Assad's first trip to China in almost 2 decades. That comes as he seeks financial support to rebuild his country after the war devastation. China is the only nation outside of West Asia that the Syrian president has visited since the civil war broke out in his country in the year 2011. China's foreign ministry has said his visit will take ties to a new level. Japan's Crown Prince Akihiko and Crown Princess Kiko met with Vietnam's President Vo Vang Thiong in Hanoi. The royals are on a 6-day visit to Vietnam. The trip marks 50 years of diplomatic relations between the two nations as Japan seeks to deepen ties within the region. Japan is the largest source of official development aid to Vietnam and is also the Southeast Asian country's third largest source of foreign direct investment as well. Thousands of migrants have crossed into the U.S. in recent days. The influx from California to Texas, with many more still arriving by bus and cargo trains to the Mexican border towns on the heels of the record migration flows. The dramatic increase along the border marks a turning point after numbers had plummeted in recent months. This could also create fresh political challenges for the U.S. President Joe Biden heading into an election season. Experts say the U.S. lacks the capability to detain and process migrants at the border. This often makes it impossible for the administration to carry out the harsh penalties it announced earlier this year. The Brazilian indigenous people erupted in celebration after a majority of Brazil's Supreme Court overwhelmingly voted against a cut-off date limiting land claims. The top court said 6 of its 11 justices rejected that deadline on the grounds that it was unconstitutional, while 2 judges voted to introduce the limit to end land conflicts and give farmers judicial security. The restriction was sought by the country's powerful farm lobby to block rights to land that indigenous people did not live on in 1988. Bulgaria's police scuffled with ultra-nationalist Revival Party protesters against the policies of the pro-Western government. The agitators called for the government to resign and for the closure of the NATO military bases. Scores of protesters opposing the country's support for the war in Ukraine gathered outside the parliament building. The protesters demanded fresh polls in the country, which has already gone through 5 elections in the last 2 years. Bulgaria has been sending arms to Kyiv and has lifted its ban on Ukrainian grain last week. United Auto Workers and the Detroit Three are still locked in with Friday's deadline, threatening an expansion of the union's U.S. strike. The 7-day standoff is fueling worries that could disrupt production and ripple through the supply chains and dent the U.S. economic growth. The union workers are demanding higher pay and better health care benefits. The automakers have proposed a hike of 20% over the course of 2 years. Analysts have said that the strikes are likely to last several weeks, potentially cutting third quarter U.S. gross domestic product by 0.39%. Peruvian authorities torched over 15 tons of seized drugs from various anti-narcotic operations in the country. A local official said the drugs included cocaine, marijuana and various other chemical substances in different stages of production. It is the 3rd time the Interior Ministry has carried out an activity such as this in the capital city of Lima. Peru's Interior Ministry has said that the authorities have seized over 53 tons of drugs this year alone. Greek state workers went on strike to protest government plans to change labour laws on Thursday. Thousands protested outside the parliament in Athens as lawmakers discussed the bill inside. Firefighters, teachers, doctors and transport staff said that they'd trample on workers' rights. The 24-hour nationwide strike disrupted public transport and caused traffic delays. Trains and buses were operating on reduced hours. State hospitals operated on emergency staff and many schools were also closed. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas addressed the United Nations General Assembly on Thursday. President Abbas said that peace cannot prevail in West Asia without the Palestinian people enjoying their full and legitimate national rights. Abbas called on the international community at the UN to hold Israel accountable for its resolution violations against the Palestinian people. He also accused Israel of a litany of violations against Palestinian rights. The president also called for an international conference to revive the peace process and try to salvage the two-state solution. Sudan's rapid security forces say that they are fully prepared for a ceasefire to end the civil conflict with the army. The message came in a recorded video addressed to the UN General Assembly and released by the RSF. It came shortly before Army leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan was due to give a speech to the Assembly in New York. Both the sides have blamed each other for starting the war that erupted in mid-April and has spread to the other parts of the country. The conflict has displaced more than 5 million people and threatened to destabilize the region. Kenya has pledged to reinforce security measures against Somalia militants. This comes as the country commemorated a deadly mall attack which led to improvements in the country's readiness to counter threats. Even a decade after the upscale Westgate mall attack, militants from the group are still launching sporadic attacks on Kenyan soil. Kenya's Director General of Private Security Regulatory Authority said the country has embarked on a security reform agenda to make the country safer. The Westgate mall attack was in retaliation for Kenya sending its troops into Somalia in 2011 to battle Al-Shabaab militants. Delegates of Armenia and Azerbaijan exchanged heated words at the UNSC meet following their recent heat-up in Nagorno. The Armenian Minister for Foreign Affairs alleged that Azerbaijan's recent operation in the contested region was unprovoked and well planned. He further said that it was hard to believe that all of this was happening not a century in the past, but today in front of the international community. Bogota enjoyed a car-free day on Thursday in an effort to curb traffic and air pollution levels. Only certain vehicles such as public transportation, school buses, vehicles for people with disabilities, electric vehicles and ambulances were allowed on the streets. Over 463,000 cyclists participated and more than 2 million people used public transportation. Bogota authorities said that the measure will strive to decrease carbon dioxide emissions by 57% in one of the Latin American cities with the worst vehicular traffic. The International Committee of the Red Cross said that sanitation and water access are the most urgent needs in Derna as humanitarian assistance is being deployed in flood-hit Libya. ICRC's head of Libya delegation said that the organization's work was being unimpeded by the local authorities, but a strong military presence was visible in the region. Thousands are dead and thousands more missing after the storm Daniel hit the eastern coast of Libya on September 10th. Hundreds of bodies have been recovered from the sea since searches began, and there are many left to find. It is being estimated that over 20,000 people have been lost due to the floods, with over 3,900 people that have died. Brazilians flock to the beach in Rio as a large part of the country is expected to suffer from extreme heat this week. The weather department has said that temperatures could exceed above 40 degrees Celsius. The atmospheric conditions will prevent the arrival of cold fronts in most of the country over the next few days. This will prompt a long sequence of sunny days with heat well above the normal levels for the last week of winter in the southern hemisphere. The forecaster has also warned of potential health issues resulting from the constant and excessive heat that will mainly affect a large part of the southeast region. Shanghai's flagship Apple store attracted long queues of people picking up their iPhone 15 pre-orders. However, some were unimpressed by the new iPhone models. The high-end iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max models were sold out at the Apple store in Alibaba's small marketplace within a minute of going on sale. Despite strong sales, customers were unimpressed with the new features when he compared the new iPhone to the Huawei Mate 60 Pro, which was applauded by state media as a triumph by China over US sanctions. Britain's antitrust regulator has signalled approval for Microsoft's restructured acquisition of Activision Blizzard. The initial $69 billion deal was blocked earlier due to concerns of monopolization the cloud gaming market. In August, Activision Blizzard agreed to sell its streaming rights to Ubisoft Entertainment, which significantly elevated these concerns. The UK's Competition and Markets Authority has stated that this Ubisoft divestment substantially addresses previous concerns. However, there are still residual concerns about the potential circumvention of certain provisions. In a bid to ease trade restrictions on European businesses, EU Trade Commissioner has embarked on a 4-day visit to China amid growing concerns about China's proximity to Russia. This will mark a renewal of dialogue following the pandemic-induced disruptions. However, it comes on the heels of the EU's decision to investigate punitive tariffs on Chinese electric vehicle imports, potentially straining relations. The EU attributes its €400 billion trade deficit to Chinese barriers, intensifying the need for discussion. India faces rising concerns over surging oil prices, but its economic outlook remains optimistic. Despite oil prices hitting 10-month high due to extended production cuts from major suppliers like Saudi Arabia and Russia, the Indian government has refrained from sounding alarms. Key factors brightening the economic landscape include improved September monsoons and a decline in prices of crucial food items. India's heavy reliance on international crude oil markets for over 80% of its supply raises eyebrows amid this price surge.